Hi to everybody.
Just a quick note to all our attendees, we will be getting started very shortly.
Yep.
The board is just coming out of exec and President Rudley will give us directions about the audience participation when it is time.
Okay, great. I'm just waiting for,
A couple others, yep.
I think we have. Okay, we have all the board members. Is anybody else that's presenting tonight? Are we still waiting for them or we're all good?
Yeah, Dr. Sanchez should be here
And Dr. Sanchez.
in just a second.
And tonight we have with us so far in the audience 60 members. 60 audience members.
Sorry, I'm just getting coffee. I'm gonna put my sidekick down.
Name.
Okay, is everybody ready?
Yes, we are live on YouTube and we are good to go.
Okay, I'd like to take a motion to reconvene the regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Okay, thank you. And as we start off all of our meetings, I'd like to ask Trustee Crossling to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and Illy will be sharing her screen with the American flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the United
of the
States,
United States of America, and
to
to
the
the
republic
republic for which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
God,
God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And tonight I would like to read some prouds. I'd like to also first start off by welcoming our audience members. We have about 65 tonight, and thank you all for coming and for working with our schedule of shifting the board meeting till 8 o'clock. And what we're going to do, as we've been doing, we will have audience comments after each agenda item is presented. And then there'll also be time at the end of the meeting after we finish the board's business to also ask questions. Because we have a lot of attendees and there'll be a lot of questions, we ask everybody to just do it in 2 minutes, and then we'll do our best to answer it. And then if you have an additional question, please feel free to get back on the digital line and you could just raise your digital hand. The Q&A is only for technical issues. And we ask everybody to respect the Q&A, and we had an audience member a few weeks back not be very respectful to one of our board members, so we're asking everybody to do so, and we appreciate everybody being here tonight. With that, I'd like to open up and share the prouds as of August 18th, and also the prouds and the events that are coming up. So we have upcoming webinars. We have for elementary families tomorrow, August 19th, 4 o'clock will be in English, and at 5 o'clock will be in Spanish. On Thursday, August 20th, for secondary families, we'll have another parent forum on reopening, led by our principals, as well as the elementary principals are leading the one on the 19th. And the one on the 20th is also at 4 o'clock for English speaking families, and I believe 5 o'clock for the Spanish families. We'd like to congratulate Tim Skolton on being named the New York State School Psychologist of the Year. Thank you to the Ossining Padres Hispanos for hosting a Facebook Live session last week. Thank you to the PTA and OPAC for hosting a webinar with parents on Monday evening. Congratulations to our Ossining Director of Guidance, Ms. Lopez, who was recently appointed as the Culturally Responsive Committee Co-Chair to the NYASP Executive Board. Congratulations. Milk and Cookies with Ms. Traeger takes place this week. Come read a great book with us on August 20th at 6:30 p.m. And thank you very much to the Ossining Matters for what I heard was a magical night for their drive-in movie fundraiser. I hope it went very well. So congratulations there. Facebook Live sessions will continue to take place every Monday at 5 p.m. with the superintendent, unless there's a parent forum going on that evening. The Bookmobile Tour takes place on August 26th at Spring Street at 11:30 and at Park School at 2 p.m. So come by and grab a new book to read. School supply lists have been posted on the opening website. And I also want to make sure that everybody continues to look at our website, our reopening website. There's information being added all the time. All the frequently asked questions are on there, as well as the many questions that we gathered beforehand, before our last board meeting and this one as well, that have been answered. So please go there. And one other thing that I thought was of note, the New York State PTA put out a meme congratulating all the anniversaries of the PTA charter, PTA units. And early childhood PTA showed up as an anniversary because they were first established August 1st, 1947. So 73 years of anniversary there. So congratulations there. And again, welcoming everybody. And I would like to turn this over to Dr. for our equity update and summer school presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, President Rudley. Just give me a second while I share my screen. And can you see that okay? Are you looking at the presentation? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, folks. Okay, so just by way of background, this is not at all our usual summer school presentation. It's our weekly new equity update, but there are some definite equity issues embedded in our summer school and the secondary level. So we thought that it would make sense to combine the two. And before I get started, there are a few things I want to recognize. As we set out with our talented group of administrators and very strong educators to plan this, we knew that our summer was going to be an extra challenge. We knew that summer school and the secondary level is particularly challenging to begin with, but coming off from emergency remote learning, we knew that we were fighting against a lot of disengagement, and we went the extra mile to do whatever we could to make sure that we were engaging learners throughout the summer. Similarly, though, in the high school level, it was a unique opportunity. It was a really unique opportunity for students to be able to recover their credit without having to retake a readiness exam, And so we wanted to seize every bit of that opportunity with and alongside our students. So what you'll see in here is some very thought-filled design, but in the data, you'll also see that amongst some really bright spots, there's definite room for growth. So we want to be honest and courageous in all of our equity conversations, and that's what you'll see here and hear from us tonight. Before I go on to, I'll be remiss, I want to thank Mr. Dreves, Ms. Pueyo, and Ms. Mercado for being here this evening. And they will hop on to answer any of the questions after I'm done presenting. But they're a really special team and did an excellent job. And I just want to start there by thanking them. So with the AMD program, we had three major overarching goals. I already mentioned the active engagement. We knew that folks, that all of us, frankly, are coming out with trauma. So we needed to really tend to socio-emotional needs in these digital spaces. And then the other big goal was to prepare them for the fall, for 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. We want to be able to make sure that they had the necessary skills to be able to do what they need to do in either a hybrid environment or a fully remote environment. So the plan was to provide PBL informed projects that offered a lot of voice and choice. There were these massive choice boards where students were able to choose a different mini project each week. Highly engaging titles. And then we scaffolded it with clear supports, live instruction, regular check-ins, and regular scaffolds for those projects. So we felt in the end that the PBL choice board was very successful as a model, and that we were able to check and connect with students and put in those SEL supports. We also had success mentors for the first time with some college partnerships, students that were really able to be set up one-on-one with many of our students. In terms of weaknesses, what we learned right away is that the amount of planning time needed in preparation for a PBL environment, for a blended learning environment, was significant, and significantly more than an ordinary summer school. The other thing that we learned was that even though we benefited into keeping engagement with the many choices, the vast array of choices that were there, the little mini excursions, the choose your own adventure, as it were, is what we titled it. They only lasted 4 days. So we really would have preferred that students could have maybe gone a little bit deeper and deeper learning with those little mini projects. And you'll see me mention this several times throughout the presentation, but the amount of labor-intensive attendance support to maybe make sure that our students are engaged and we're connecting and calling and recalling, and in many cases doing home visits. Kids can get lost unless the staff and parents stay on top of it. So I mentioned these choice boards. We also recognize that we are in a really unique time in history, and that while equity has always been our plate, it was pushed to the forefront more than ever, and that our students had been experiencing the same things we had throughout society, and social justice issues and activism and the like. So we really sought out to kind of unpack some of that with our kids and give them opportunities to engage in those spaces and interrogate their surroundings and what they're learning and not learning from the larger socio-political context. So as you see there's some examples. My Voice Matters, a conversation about Black Lives Matters was embedded in there. There was about identity, choosing your own story, Maya Angelou, spoken word poem, that was really embedded into what we were doing. So here's the good news, and I said that there are going to be bright spots. The students that were surveyed gave and parents, very high ratings and rankings for the experience that they had throughout the summer. But what you'll see is that our real challenge was that despite all of that daily effort and intense calling and intense efforts to connect with kids, our attendance did not match those efforts. And so we had a strikingly low rate of attendance. Now, something to know about that, there are a couple things at work there. There were some enrollment issues in the very beginning where we had slated for 175 originally. Some of those students needed to be rematched with the high school program and some rematched with the elementary program. There's a little confusion around that. So some of those original rostering did persist and accounts for some of the low numbers. But we also did see a significant drop off in official enrollment, where you know, in the middle school, it's a choice for a student to be there, and it's a choice for a family to be there. It's not exactly a credit recovery. It's more about an enrichment and intervention program. And so as much as we tried to make it really engaging, we did have some drop off along the way, and some disagreements between parents and students about wanting to do it along the way. And you can see that there in the numbers. Just to give you a sense of what grades, you know, highest was grade 5 into 6, 6 into 7, and then you know, only a handful of 7 into 8. So to get into the equity discussion, the question is, you know, were we able to engage the learners and engage all segments of our school population in an equitable fashion, proportionately? And we did so. Highlight here is that we were able to engage, you know, our low SES students, some of our neediest students that exhibited live in poverty. Gender was not as equitable as we would have liked to see, right? But perhaps it has to do with middle school and need. There was definitely a little bit of disproportionate representative among males, and I'm sure that probably related, perhaps without stereotyping along gender lines, it may have related to our challenge with engagement. So the pink bars are natural proportions of our entire school population. So we were a little low in you know, Black or African Americans, and we were able to engage significantly more Hispanic or Latino students in the summer. In terms of L's, you know, we kind of underrepresented in our summer school for our limited English proficient students. So as you'll see here, this is really our kind of our benchmark, whereas the AMD summer school doesn't have grades. It isn't it's really just a pass, fail, or credit for, or an acknowledgement for being there. We issue certificates and the like, but the benchmark is in passing rate. And so you'll see that differently when we look at OHS. Our real benchmark is who did we engage and how well did we engage them. So we take a look at OHS. There are really 3 objectives, or 3 different programs, I should say. And these are the objectives of all 3 of those programs. The 3 being credit recovery, freshman academy, and an online credit recovery with a fully online platform with a teaching assistant monitoring that and engaging students with the work that's predominantly independent. So similar to AMD, we sought out to create a project or problem-based. Problem-based is a little bit different in the high school and lends itself better to math and these deeper cognitive skills that are necessary to kind of advance skill sets in cumulative subjects where those skills need to accumulate over time. But we really looked at it as, let's just demonstrate course mastery, let's recover the credit, and take advantage of that opportunity to be able to do a local authentic assessment as opposed to the regions. So we also were able to, you know, socio-emotional learning was a real priority. And the idea was that for students to be able to engage content in regions courses that they might not otherwise have the opportunity to do in a very traditional setting. Equity was also addressed and embedded in many of the conversations and projects within each of these courses. In terms of the freshman academy, you see that it was all about transition and readiness for learning in a remote and hybrid environment. So just a few successes for OHS. You know, we felt that we were able to successfully and I guess more successfully than in you know, May and June, utilize a co-teaching environment and leveraging the best of both educators that were teamed up. So they're able to differentiate, they're able to do small group instruction, they're able to do split up and some station teaching. We added a summer school counselor this summer and are very pleased that we did, because the registration was much smoother. We got an immediate start. There wasn't a lag in the startup. And it was also very helpful to evaluate different students as as they encountered unique situations around a kid's course needs and credit accrual. So we also expanded our criteria just a little bit around the online credit recovery program for seniors. That was very helpful, and we were able to do, I don't have the data on that, but we were able to do a better job than that, I should say, than we have in the past. So challenges with OHS is that attendance and lateness policy. Well, we had a criteria and a threshold in place. It was more challenging to communicate this with families and students in a fully virtual environment. And then, of course, the synchronous instruction etiquette. We had a lot of students who would tune in and then turn off their cameras, and then it was very hard to monitor their level of engagement as such. So again, proportional in terms of registration. You get a glimpse on the left-hand side of the overall demographics. On the right-hand side, it's showing a proportionality to our ordinary, or our, I should say, full school enrollment. The blue is what our proportions are throughout OHS, and then the orange is what our enrollments were in summer school. So we're pleased that we were able to engage a little bit more Ls and more special education students this summer. But you see that over here, we weren't able to capture as many of the economically disadvantaged students as we would otherwise really want to see engaged in a summer school program. And so attendance overall, and like I said, this is no slight against AMD or their efforts, but slightly better than AMD. As you know, there's higher stakes for the high school students in terms of engagement. They need to most of these credits for graduation, but again, these are not the kind of attendance numbers that we would have liked to have seen. We are notably disappointed in them. But as I said earlier, it is just definitely not for lack of effort. So just give a sense of how the grades shaped out. These are the mean grades by course, showing the means came into the passing range. The ends at the bottom, that gives you a sense of how many students were enrolled in each of these courses that are all needed for graduation. And here are our passing rates. Some courses had had experienced a much more positive passing rate than others. And that also, what I'd say, translate to how you transfer the content and transfer the information into a fully remote environment. So take a look at these. Overall failure rate was 23%, so 48 out of 210 students enrolled did not pass their course. We are disappointed in that, but I will say that summer is a challenge always, every summer, and I'll say a few more words about that later on, but that is similar or on parity, maybe a little bit lower than what a typical summer year is for us in terms of the Regents credit recovery. One thing that should jump off from these bars is that of the 48 students that did not pass their courses, 100% of them are economically disadvantaged. So, we break everything down by ethnicity and special ed and English language learners, but we also look at socioeconomic status, and this is a real significant factor here and inhibiting factor for sure in a fully remote environment, something that we already know and that we specifically went out to combat. And it doesn't appear here that we were able to fully close that gap. So briefly, lessons learned, how we move forward this year in future summer programs. And frankly, what does this do to inform us about this year ahead? So the ongoing intervention services and the continuity in our system, the passing the information along from school to school about our individual students and their needs is absolutely essential. It was always essential, but it's even more essential than ever. Virtual wraparound, what we call wraparound services. So not just socio-emotional supports, but some on-the-go counseling and some regular check-in connects, along with food and connection with community agencies. These things are absolutely essential. We were able to gain some institutional experience as around adjusting practices for remote learning or hybrid setting. Some of the practices that our summer school educators engaged in will be really relevant and timely as we talk about reopening school. I already mentioned this, but front loading the planning, the planning beforehand is essential, and there's adjustments along the way, but the front loaded planning is really important in this type of environment. I already mentioned how labor intensive the attendance supports were, but we also did learn that, think about this, of these 210 high schoolers and 126 middle schoolers, there are some students that didn't thrive in the spring, right? And that's how they ended up in our summer program, and they fully thrived and were effective in a virtual environment over the summer. So, this is not a surprise, but we learned even more than ever that self-regulation and executive functioning are the most needed skills for students to be able to be successful in this environment. And when we're lacking in that area, the amount of adult one-on-one check and connect support is extremely important. So I'll end on this thought, and that is that we have been adapting our summer school for a few different years in a row, and we have been intensely trying to innovate in both secondary spaces. And for high school in particular, I don't think the verdict's out just yet with middle school, because it is more of an enrichment model. But with high school, we really should consider thinking about and evaluating the overall effectiveness of summer school. And what do I mean by that? These are less than ideal circumstances, even without a pandemic and being fully virtual, and students essentially trying to do the same thing over again that didn't really work well for them the first time. And so I offer you this as a concept to consider as we go forward, this notion of credit preservation rather than credit recovery. We shouldn't be waiting, and we're not waiting. Don't get the wrong idea that we sit on our hands until the end of the year and then all of a sudden intervene with our students that have failed. Don't want to give that impression at all. But I think we should play with this idea of credit preservation and think about Saturdays along the way during the year on a quarterly basis, and a quarterly credit recovery, and some intense supports, whether it's AIS, whether it's after school. We should put our intense supports in as we go along the way, and put our resources there rather than at the end of the year where the burdens are deeper. So I'll stop there, and I just want to invite my colleagues to chime in with anything that I might have missed, or maybe they want to just wait until the question and answer. But thank you.
Thank you, Dr. All right. It looks like, is that fair if we go to questions, or does any?
Yeah, that's fine.
Panel? Yep. Okay, great. I want to thank you very much for this presentation. I'd like to open it up to our board for questions, and then we'll go to the audience to ask a question on this agenda item. All right. Wanted to see if any of my colleagues have their, okay. Trustee Crossling, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Lisa. A couple of quick questions. So my main takeaway from this was that the amount of planning prep by staff was overwhelming, and the amount of time that they had to prepare the curriculum was not enough, and that your recommendation is that front-loading planning is essential as we go into the fall, which makes sense. And obviously we're going to have a far greater population of students that we're trying to meet the needs of this fall with, a varying degree of needs. So I wanted to ask you if you could help us understand how much planning time was given prior to the summer school program.
Yeah, I'll have Craig, Ellie, and Mirla speak to that. And I don't want to, I want to just correct a little bit. And that is that, and I don't want to speak for our educators that were on the ground leading this program, but it wasn't so much that it was overwhelming as it went on, but it's very important, as you said, to front load it, and that planning has to happen in advance of getting these more, these different formats in play. So Craig or Ellie or Mirla, if you want to speak to that.
Well, I can speak to, can you guys hear me okay?
You're good, buddy.
Okay, excellent. So we had 10 hours of advanced preparation for the various courses. But that time was used. I mean, there were new skill sets. We were kind of using our summer program as kind of an incubator, an idea that we would try some new things and try to discover new ways to do things better. And so as we were learning, we spent some of that time doing the project-based learning and learning about how to effectively design those courses. So, I don't know if overwhelming, is the best way to term it. It's intensive, the planning that goes on. And then the teachers, of course, over the course of the summer are also contacting at various times. So there's just a lot of extra time, I think, that's dedicated to supporting the students. That when you're teaching in the school, it's not quite to the same level. So that was the feedback that the teachers provided. They just felt like it was more intensive this summer. The prep, and then also the management of trying to keep the kids engaged, adapting the plan to meet the kids where they were. They had designed something, and then they had students in front of them that maybe it wasn't designed quite to the correct level or to the amount of days in front of them, and so they had to adjust. And I think that's basically what the teacher feedback led us to understand.
And just remind me, just a quick clarification, the program was open to every student, or certain students were recommended for it, just to clarify.
In AMD, it was both, yep.
We actually, first of all, recommended the kids who needed it the most and invited those kids first, and then open it up to everyone. Everyone was invited to the program and were able to participate. But we try to reach out to those kids who needed the most support to come with it first and call the parents and send a letter to make sure that those kids got the first choice, but then we open it up to everybody. And to add to what Craig said, this was a very innovative year creating this project-based learning, where we had about 21 different projects going from Voice Matters, from arts and craft, incorporating partnerships, success mentors that were actually meeting with the kids and learning about the program. So, anything new requires more time for, we're training the teachers and teaching them more about project-based learning and how to give students voice. Students had the opportunity to express their learning in different ways. Some students wrote songs, they wrote poems, they show artistic work to show the learning. So it's very different than the traditional way. So I think that's why, it requires more planning and more, thinking out of the box for teachers. And that's definitely required in, creating rubrics to meet those, to meet the needs of every single student. Students were also given the choice to present their projects in Spanish or English, whatever they feel more comfortable with. And we actually, were able to, some of the Fordham, Manhattanville, and Pace University students who were bilingual were able to join those classes, and those kids who felt more comfortable presenting in Spanish, they worked with them on the other days and they were able to do that. So all of that takes time and more planning. So I think because it's not the traditional way, that the way that it was done and it was new, that's why it was a learning curve also for the teachers.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I would also like to just add a little bit more to the conversation on behalf of the high school. So first of all, I really felt that the teachers really embraced the idea of project-based learning. I think they were just as excited as we were in order to create this new innovative program. However, it was a very difficult task because at the high school level in particular, we had to really be cognizant of what were the core skills and concepts that really needed to be disseminated through these projects. So teachers had to be very careful to think about and select the big ideas and think about which projects would be better served in really because they're really condensing a year's worth of learning in a summer program. So that took a lot of time. So we had in total about 4 hours of professional development, where Dr. and Chris Damaria and I, more Mr. Damaria and Dr. who really talked about professional project-based learning. We talked about the structure of the program. We talked about how co-teaching would work. So there were a lot of logistical pieces. And then to really create the projects themselves, teachers had 6 hours. And the projects had to be insightful, innovative, and also demonstrate performance-based. Something else that took us a little time also to get on board is the lack of technology on behalf of some of our students. So we were really following up through phone calls and emails. You know, we asked parents if they had the Wi-Fi, if they had Chromebooks available. And once we were able to make sure that all these logistical pieces were in place, I think that everyone really embraced the program. And I really feel that that really was effective for our students.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members have a question? Okay, Trustee Banta.
So thank you for that presentation. And I think it's very integral for us to be able to look at what was learned and identified during the Summer Academy to help prepare us for the road ahead. I think there are a lot of key factors within that data that, you know, point to some concerns I think that were already existing before we went into the summer and as we move into the fall. I guess my question would be, what did I write here? So I'm hearing that a lot of the presumption around the results that we're seeing are weighing heavily towards the project-based learning format in the different, or I guess the innovative formats that we were presenting the material in. And so are we able to identify how much of that, what we're seeing that has played out was contributed to that, and how much was contributed to, because I know we have on the slide that the SES students made up 100% of the students that failed. So is it safe to say that that was primarily a concern that was associated with the project-based learning format as opposed to the virtual format or the access and resource issues? That, I guess that was just like in my head, like a light bulb I was trying to ask myself as I'm listening to the conversation.
Yeah, it's, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very fair question and something that we're all really wrestling with, you know, but, in anything in education research, correlation is not causation. So I can't confidently attribute those results to any one particular factor. And I wish that it was that simple, but we're going to continue to pour over the data and we'll talk with kids and learn some more. We have some good survey data, but I couldn't confidently attribute it to any one thing.
Right. I saw also that the freshman academy from week 3 to 4 went down by about 50% in attendance, right? I think that's what that slide was showing. Yeah. Now, was that maybe possibly due to lack of interest on the part of the student, or is it like the virtual? I'm wondering if the virtual format played a role in that, and whether it was just hard to keep those students engaged in that format, or was it the content or a combination of the two? That's just kind of like a rhetorical question I kind of was asking myself. I do agree that credit preservation is a better way to go, right? Proactive is always a better way to go, especially considering the fact that there's already a lot of essentially catch up that students will be doing just generally across the board. So I think a way to try to find a way for them to preserve rather than constantly be playing catch up in addition to the catch up that's already going to be happening given the circumstances that were presented to us in the spring. I think that's a great idea. And, as we're seeing, unfortunately, due to many factors, obviously, I think another key component of this presentation is recognizing, what we consistently see, is that, unfortunately, the achievement gap is always staring us directly in the face. And it's only been as we expected, unfortunately exacerbated by the circumstances. And so I think if nothing else, the Summer Learning Academy provided a lot of opportunities to learn, how to adjust the sails, so to speak, going forward. And so I think that it's very necessary for us to kind of look and dig into that data as we move forward into this future planning that we're about to commence. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Banta. Trustee Schnecker.
I mean, I really want to commend you on the efforts to implement a project-based learning model. I think, there's a lot of things you look at, that you certainly would want to see improvements with across the board in the numbers. But I have to say, I think that especially at the middle school, the approval numbers that came in from the families that were actively engaged were really high, higher than I recall. I think the trick is, and we talked about, some of the big issues, as you mentioned, Dr. about, self-regulation, executive function. We all know that really engaging curriculum, right, doesn't address all those issues, but really takes a lot. So I guess the only question I would ask, and I think is to improve, is there an opportunity to survey students that went through and basically, even the ones that maybe dropped off, and say, what is it that you would have liked to have gotten out of the program that you didn't? And as we talk about professional development next year in 4 hours to try and figure out how we try to find all the hooks for all the kids that need it, maybe we need to dedicate some more time to that. But it just seems like an opportunity really to find out, like, how did we miss the mark for those? And some of them are going to be traditional challenges that you have just with developing young adults, right? But maybe there's some also things that we would hear that would be related directly to the achievement gap. If students don't see relevance in what they're doing, it's almost less important about what they read and more important that they read something they can identify and like and do. So I just would like for us, if there's possibility, I know we're in the midst of a lot of different things, but at least just to think about the idea of how do we take the misses and learn from them, right? But I really want to thank you for the efforts and appreciate it. This was an important presentation.
Thank you, Trustee Schnecker. Anybody else? Trustee Spring.
Just a few questions. First is a yes or no. There were no August Regencies this year, right?
That's correct.
So for the Regents courses, could you kind of walk through how those grades were calculated? Was it mostly classwork? Were there online quizzes, homework? How did the summer courses go specifically for the Regents courses?
So there were a variety of things, but you mentioned some of the areas. So every project had a rubric that teachers had to, present to the students. And then they calculated participation, attendance, mini assignments throughout, and the project itself. And all of that yielded a final grade. And if the students passed the course, that means that they also passed the Regents. So it was a phenomenal opportunity. My mantra every time I spoke to kids, can you imagine you're taking a course in a small program rather than retaking the course for 180 days next year? And I think that became what pushed some kids to complete the courses. So it was participation, attendance, and the actual assignments that had to be created in order to create that final project.
Thank you. On the AMD level, how, if at all, were we tracking proficiency when it came to reading and math during summer school?
So we didn't have formal assessments in the way that we would do in a normal year with fluencies and things like that. But the courses were designed. All of the courses were designed to be building on the foundational skills of computation and reading comprehension. But one of the things that we knew going into this was that we needed to engage the students, keep their minds engaged, give them exciting and things that they would love to be looking at, and just keep them academically challenged in many ways. But it was somewhat intentional in this year because of the trauma that we knew our students were dealing with, because of the virtual format and everything. We didn't want to add additional assessments in this virtual model, and we designed them to be quick, right? They were just 4 days. And so no, we don't, the formal assessments, weren't really a focus of this year's program.
And thank you for that. And the 23% that failed, are there any action steps? You don't have to answer this tonight, or what's the plan moving forward to make sure that our most vulnerable students either take these classes to the point of proficiency and excelling, or what are we doing to watch out for those 23%?
I'll just briefly answer yes, exactly, right? So we've identified them as such. We have them right here in our hands, and they will be front and center as we move into the fall.
Thank you. And one quick suggestion, Dr. Alm, I liked how you said the benchmark should be about engaging. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
So I think
AAMD in particular, yeah, because it's not about credit accrual.
so when we talk about social justice and topics relating to social justice, my personal suggestion would be, in addition to the national and global issues, is to bring some Ossining issues, front and center. When we talk about, I saw you said the Pacific garbage patch was in there. Be interesting to also look into litter in the Hudson River, or litter in our streets as well. So just one way to perhaps keep the kids engaged is talk Ossining or even Westchester centric issues, on top of course, the national and global issues that are also important to us.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. I just have, it looks like we don't have any audience questions, but I just have a couple of quick questions. Compared to last year at this time, the credit recovery that we did, do you recall the percentage of passing and?
I mentioned it briefly. I didn't do a workup on that, so I don't have the precise numbers. But from what I can recall in studying this each year, it's somewhat similar. Perhaps a little lower, but somewhat similar.
Okay.
To add that last year's numbers were based really on the regions themselves.
Yeah.
So if kids passed that regions, then they were able to accrue the credit as well and pass the course.
Right, you wouldn't know what it was like without the Regents
Right.
exam. So
I do have that data if you're interested. I could read it to you really quickly. Give me a second. So in algebra, 36% passing rate. In ELA, 32 passing rate. Living environment, 37. US history, 27%, and global history, 14%. And I do want to point out that this year we had Earth Science, which was the first time that was offered at the high school as well. So these are the passing Regents rates from last year.
okay. And then thank you. And I guess looking forward, and I think we've talked about this, is our the tutoring help, the programs that we have, and matching up with our students that are in the most need. So, I mean, just more of a comment, and I know you're looking into that. So thank you very much. This is a really, really important conversation, and it is going to lead into our school year and what it looks like as well. All right, we have one audience member. Dr. Alm, if you would, please bring this person in. And I want to remind the audience that they can ask a question regarding this agenda item, and we'll ask you to unmute your mic and feel free to share your camera. You'll have 2 minutes to ask your question or comment, and we'll do our best to answer it. And welcome, Ms. Trustman. Please unmute your mic.
Can you see me?
We can't see you, but we can hear you. So please please say.
I was just wondering what
Address,
is
please.
going on for September, if the schools are ready to open, and are you guys prepared for our children to come in?
Miss,
Like, I understand that you guys talk
actually,
about,
just so you know, that's our next agenda item. we're going
Okay,
to,
can we talk about that now? Because Black Lives definitely matters, and we totally appreciate that. And summer school was a bust, but can we talk about the September school year?
well, I can tell you, we have an agenda that we're following, and we needed to speak about this, and we will be getting to the reopening very shortly. So thank you, and we appreciate your comment. Dr. Sanchez, want to give us some final thoughts for this?
Just first of all, I want to thank Dr. Holm and the team, Mr. Drees, Ms. Mercado, Ms. Puello for being here to present, and also for the thoughtful reflections on, not only the bright spots that we see and note in the work, but also the areas that we need to, we can use as we proceed and go forward. I appreciate the board also reaching, sharing this, space also to discuss topics related to equity, whether that's student achievement or various others that we're going to continue to engage in. But to say that there was, a lot of tireless effort on the part of our leaders that are present here right now, to lift the program that was completely different and offered in a very different way than we've had to do it in the past. So I want to thank them publicly for that, and others, in addition to our staff members, and certainly acknowledging clearly where we need to do additional work and how do we use the information we know to modify our programs to best meet the needs of kids as we proceed into the upcoming school year. So just general thank you to everybody and for everyone in preparing this presentation here tonight.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'd also like to remind the audience that we, as our board meetings go along, we have agenda items, and we ask the audience to please comment or ask a question on a particular agenda item. And also we'll have time at the end. And we've had a tremendous amount of time in the community, Facebook Lives and parent forums for these discussions. And this is just another opportunity. So we appreciate your patience, but we also need to talk about the very important topics that we just talked about. So with that, thank you, Dr. Sanchez. And now, if we're ready, we can move into our next agenda item, which is reopening of schools and the update.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So I'm going to give you, first of all, I want to thank the board and the attendees for the opportunity to share additional information regarding our reopening of schools. As was noted by President Rudley, we've had numerous conversations and discussions with our community about where we are. This serves as a brief update. There are some new items to provide some clarity to our community, and I know there's a number of staff members watching as to where our work is. I do want to remind everyone that this is not the only meeting that we've had, and have noted actually tomorrow there is, I believe, an elementary meeting, and then in turn a secondary meeting that are taking place. So those are real specific related to each of those buildings and unique programs that are offered in our elementary schools, middle school, and high school. And in advance, I want to thank the leaders that have helped to prepare those presentations, and also to note that during this period of time, we've also engaging our staff in various building-based meetings to make sure that the questions are specific to their specific buildings and they can have discussions with their administrators as such. So we actually, just a few minutes ago, I had one with our elementary principals. So I'm just going to go through, this is really the beginning part, or just some reminders. Some of this, I hope at this point, appears to be more repetitive, and that might be good, because that means that we're creating similar mindset as it relates to the work. The other part of it too is that we need to remind ourselves that this is iterative, and that we continue to be responding to the various comments from our community, comments from our staff, and comments from our students as we move and go forward. We're listening really carefully, and each of these meetings serves as an opportunity to learn and strengthen our plans as we look towards the upcoming school year. This was shared at the last presentation. This is the elementary schedule. Just as a reminder, this is a sample for all watching, and ensuring also that we keep in mind that this is not necessarily specific to the times are still to be adjusted, but it gives you a general sense of what we're looking at, reminding that in a hybrid model, those families that have chosen to go live, that calls for 2 days in school and 1 and 3 days virtual. In addition to that, we're those students that are participating virtually, we're looking to enhance the amount of synchronous education that we're providing. I'll share a little bit down with it further into the presentation how we intend to do that in collaboration, obviously, with our unions and our teachers in some of the methodologies that we want to look to implement during the upcoming year. This is our virtual elementary. Again, this is having, if we are called to go fully remote. I do want to preface this by saying, or at least reiterate, that at any time during the school year, we might be going from hybrid to remote, from remote back to hybrid, because of the nature of the virus, not only within our state, but also within the context of Ossining. So these plans are important to have in the context of making sure that our staff feel comfortable in implementing these, because once again, at any time, we may need to pivot based on the information that we have moving forward. So this gives you a sense of what our elementaries are. At the middle school, it remains the same as what we presented before, so there is no change at this point. It basically follows the period schedule that we have, 8 periods at the middle school and 9 periods at the high school. And in terms of the teaching periods, the amount of time is very similar. However, we should note that we are trying to bring in, for instance, our life skills students 5 days a week, and some of our CALP students at minimum of increasing the amount of days that they're in to provide additional support for our students as we move forward. So looking at it through the lens of equity, which is something obviously we started our conversation with, but also trying to address fundamental needs of our students. This is a sample, once again, sample of our hybrid at our middle school and sample hybrid at the high school. Once again, keeping in mind that this is following a 9-period day, reminding everyone that this involves synchronous education across the board. The amount of synchronous time will vary based on the subject area and the purpose of the lesson. So it could be a full period if the teacher chose, but it also could be a quick mini lesson and then allowing the students to move in. But we'll leave that and determine that based on the purpose of the lesson and working with our teaching staff and the trust that we have in them. And then here is the remote 100% option, which calls for, again, very similar in nature, but it's just for visual perspective, you get a sense of what this all looks like for everyone involved. So I share this photo because the question has surfaced: what will happen and how will virtual education happen for students that are in the hybrid model? So we're working, and we have worked collaboratively with our Teachers Association, our leaders, to determine that one of the ways in which we intend to do that is through connecting live into the classroom. So live synchronous education with the educator in the classroom. So when you're in hybrid, you'll be able to virtually come into the classroom for your mini lesson, i.e., or parts of the lesson that the teacher determines is relevant. There'll be a schedule associated with this, which is really, really important. So whether that's in the form of Google Classroom, our cameras that we have within the classroom, or just using our laptops, those will allow our students to integrate and feel as if they're a part of the classroom. Clearly, there's work to be done with our teaching staff in changing some of the practices and feeling comfortable with doing this and having a set of students that are zooming in, for lack of a better word, and those that are live before you. So this gives you, that's generally a sense of what we're working with, and want to thank our staff and agreeing to do this moving forward. This is just an update on remote, keeping in mind, and there seems to be some confusion, and it may have been some of the words that I shared last night. Families that completed the form, the online form, where we have already started to consider you for the remote learning. Some families are asking for confirmation. We're going line by line and starting to respond to those families that have made the request. If you have done that, there is no need to write in a letter to your building principal or the superintendent. We have your name, and we'll be sending confirmation out very, very soon. So just wanted to clarify that because that surfaced as a result of yesterday's live update with the PTA. So the remote learning update is the following, is that this really kind of looks at some of our numbers. There are some duplicates when we look at about 1,200 students involved in responding. These are individual students, they're not families. And it also gives you a sense of our breakdown across the board from Park School all the way through the high school. And so I want to publicly thank our administrators who are now going in to reshuffle some of the classrooms to address the requests of our families that have come in more recently. Keeping in mind too that we haven't distinguished or denied any students based on their classification, the dual language program, or any types of programs or services that we're providing. So it is taking us time. It will continue to take time, but these are basically, it gives you a sense of what this is looking like for our students and the number of students that have agreed to participate in this going forward. This is the last, one of the sort of the last few items that I want to share with our board. We are talking carefully about being ready, and we have worked hard to this point in ensuring that we are ready for our opening. So just in addressing one of our community members that came on before, we are discussing just universally about what some of the needs are and the potential. And I say the potential right now, but I'd like to come back to the board at a later date with a very more formal recommendation of potentially needing some additional time to make sure that we are ready to open, considering not only the pedagogical needs and the supports that our teachers need, the needs of our families in doing so as well, and also trying to address some of the logistical. For example, their transportation requests are extensive, number one. Creating those schedules is an extensive process, and that is something that we need to make sure is done and done correctly. And so I pose this or share this with the board because we are engaging in a conversation with our administrative team around this. We have been in conversations with our association. As you recall, our union president, more specifically from the OTA, made a public statement around their feelings for additional time. And so we're really looking carefully. I'm not prepared this evening to give you that formal recommendation, albeit we are looking at different iterations and want to ensure that we do this in a way that is timely because we know it impacts families, that is responsive and gives us the appropriate amount of time to make sure that we're ready for the upcoming school year. So I don't have a definitive on that just yet, but knowing that we are in discussions about that could entail going fully remote for a few days or potentially more than a few days to make sure that we're ready. A hybrid of a hybrid where that really calls for a quarter of our students to come into the school to test our systems, make sure our temperature checks are all set, make sure our staff feel comfortable with the procedures and practices that we're noting in the work. So, once again, these are discussions that we're having at this point, and I wish I had a definitive on that, but we're carefully looking at and balancing the needs across the district. These are important dates. Again, one of our, as was noted before about the opening of schools, the elementaries have a 4 p.m. session tomorrow, and our secondary principals are hosting a secondary presentation on the 20th, both at 4 p.m. And we'd encourage any family members or community members that want to hear specifically from any of these principals. This is a good opportunity, as well as some of our special areas, whether it's special education, E&L, transportation, or health and safety, is an opportunity for us to, it's a great opportunity for individuals to engage and continue to share feedback relative to the work. This is a reminder too, is that our next board meeting, is on the 16th, albeit we may need to call an additional one in between, and reminding everyone that we are moving to in-person board meetings there soon, very, very soon. So we're conscious of that, and just want to make sure that our community becomes aware that we are moving to in-person board meetings. And the other one too is that we also have to schedule in our look-throughs and being ready for the school year is a board walkthrough, which is a statutory requirement where our board members get a chance to visit our schools. And we'd encourage our board members, and probably we definitely work with our business official, our director of facilities, and myself and our building principals to, and our head custodians to have an opportunity to see the classrooms. I'd encourage our board members to take that time to see what the classrooms are looking like, and ask any questions along the way. Normally that's a traditional process that we do, but just for the public and anyone that's posing the question, there is time set aside for the board to see our classrooms prior to the upcoming start of the school year. So with that, I'll open it up for questions, and try to respond to any questions that we have from the board and or the community.
Ray, before we continue, I just need to go back. I just had to collect myself for a few minutes. Before we started this presentation, there was a community member who came into our board meeting, and she said something very offensive. She said she understands about Black Lives Matter, as we were discussing about our equity and our summer school. So I'd like to say to the public, to the audience members, and to whoever's watching, it was very offensive, and we don't appreciate that. And we will be having equity discussions throughout our board meetings going forward. We passed a resolution last week, and that is the way it's going to go. And that is what the community and our board wants. And I would respectfully ask people, if they have any more comments like that, to please not say them here. It will not be tolerated or accepted. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about the reopening from the school board? Or does anybody want to address what I just said at our board, within our board?
I mean, agree or disagree, she has a constitutional right to say what she wants.
Yes, I found it very offensive that when we were discussing our board meeting agenda item, that she specifically picked out a group to say, I understand Black Lives Matters. So I find it offensive that she was discriminating and pointing out one group. But thank you for your comment too, Trustee Sprang. Anybody else? Trustee Banta?
I would agree. Equity is about more than one thing. I think we're doing a disservice to our students if we make it about one thing. The term equity is the plate. It's said for a reason. It's because everyone benefits from equity, and it is. We all have free speech, but I think context matters also. And so equity is not about one group. There is one group or two groups or three groups or whatever groups that serve to benefit or need it a lot more than others, but equity is not a linear process. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have any questions from the board about the reopening plans? Trustee Galiff.
A couple questions. Before that comment, I think one thing for the community, I think up until this week, Ray, you've had your weekly meetings. The community's thirsting for information. This is our board meeting. We've had them forever. It's the board's meeting. We have to reopen the schools, but there's a lot of other things we need to talk about. And it takes time, and we need to do it when it's not 11 o'clock at night. So we do have an agenda. I think the community, I think this week in particular, there's so many meetings that the community can go to get information that hopefully over time, the board meeting, certainly people can come here. If I personally was a community member, I'd probably go to one of the other meetings where you got principals and that's the only agenda item. So that was just more of a general comment. I think, Ray, you just served the board walkthrough. That we've done every year too, and is great as a board member to see all things that happen in the school. And we talked about it last week. I'm guessing it's on the list, but I think, that video, not just for the board, but for the community, will be incredibly helpful. I don't know if each principal does it for their school or whatever, but people are going to really want to know more than ever what's going on, what a classroom likes, looks like, and parents aren't going to be able to show up and see it, and they might, wander around Brookside School on a weekend and look in the windows. But if we can have a video, I think that would be great. I do just, the first time I looked at the virtual learning chart, the pie chart, I looked at this afternoon, I was thinking that AMD and OHS were higher, but I think really what it is, they have more grades. So their percentage is higher because there's more grades at those schools, not that more kids have opted in. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, proportionally is what we're trying to look at. So it's, but generally speaking, it's fair to say that we have, I would say many early childhood students that are choosing, or families that are making that choice. And you're going to see larger numbers, obviously, because the high school has 4 grades and the middle school has 3.
Right. It looks like it's pretty equal across the grades. Roosevelt smaller because it's 1 grade.
Correct.
If you did the math, it'd be pretty simple. And just a comment, I know you shared this with Pastor Jones call earlier, but I thought it was interesting, your comment, just since we have people listening in, the AB days being part of the contact tracing. And I don't know if you would just explain that for a second.
Yeah, my understanding, and this was a conversation, and please don't hold me to it completely, is there's a conversation about contact tracing, and more specifically, let's just use the high school as an example. The question has surfaced, what happens if there's a positive case? Technically, and again, you can verify it, and we can have someone else that's more of an expert come in and speak on this, is, if it's on that A day, then we would immediately shut down, and Department of Health is going to guide us. But the contact tracing, let's say at the high school, is much more complex because of the nature of the building, the nature of the programs, and then right now, what we've maintained, which is an open campus to this point. So there is a greater likelihood, although we all want to avoid it, of having to shut down, and the shutdown might take longer because of the nature of the high school as a whole. With that too is that it may not preclude the B group from participating in learning because of them not necessarily being in the building at that period of time. Now, granted, we need teachers in the classrooms, and that that they may not be available, but technically speaking, the B group wouldn't be impacted, but the A group might be out on long-term quarantine during that period of time until we get more details.
That was it for me.
Okay. Anybody else on the board have any questions? Okay, we can go to the audience members. We have about 74 audience members, and I don't know how many we have on YouTube Live. And we have a couple of questions. Okay, so we're going to ask you to, I see the
42 on YouTube.
Oh, 42 on YouTube. Okay, terrific. Thanks, Brian. I see that you've unmuted your mic. Thank you. Hi, and your camera. Please state your full name and your address, and then we're just going to ask you to 2 minutes.
Sure, that's no problem. My name is Gina Sartario, and I'm at 17 Claremont Road in Ossining.
Welcome.
First, thank you for taking my my questions. I have so many, but I'll stick with one. I think I want to expand upon Dr. Sanchez's comments around virtual learners being able to remote in on in-classroom teaching. And I'd like to further expand upon that first, I think, to find out if that's really going to happen. And if that's going to happen, will that be an option for if we go fully remote, say schools get closed down because of the cases and things begin to change quickly? Will that be more of an option for the students to have daily learning with teachers, as opposed to what happened at the end of this year, which was very minimal interaction with teachers via the virtual option? I think it was 15, 20 minutes. And I think that was problematic for me and several of the parents that I know. I think it's important to have more of a, if we go totally virtual again, to have more of a daily interaction with the teacher and more maybe just more learning interactively, remotely, as opposed to via email. So if you can expand upon that and let me know what your thoughts are surrounding that.
The immediate and quick answer to that is yes, you can expect that. In that, you know, our students are going to be following a schedule, albeit in a remote schedule. And so, you know, within those, you're going to have interactive learning with the teacher. You know, there was a lot of concerns initially, and we all were going through that in terms of, you know, what point do we go live, or how long do we go live? In a virtual setting, it would be different now because we're better. We've also heard from our families, we've heard from our students, and you know, we can anticipate longer periods of time with our staff. Does it preclude a staff member from providing an asynchronous opportunity? No, but that should be really not the norm so much as, and we're also asking our staff members to check in with our kids every single day, even if it is an asynchronous opportunity for them. I.e., you know, they're going to, you know, make sure that kids are, let's just assume a project as an example. They're working on a project, you know, we're asking our kids to check in with their teacher, make sure that before they proceed, if it's during that period of time, they're supposed to be with the instructor. So, you know, the general answer to that, and I hope the specific answer to that, is you can expect more and more time with your teachers in live synchronous learning. You know, I know sometimes it was, you know, in some cases it'll be, you know, a lot of hard work on the part of our staff, providing decks with voiceovers and other. We're talking more about, you know, providing live opportunities as we are right now, like as, you know, in this board meeting.
And it's greatly appreciated. And I thank you for all your hard work. I can't even imagine being a parent and a teacher and an administrator trying to juggle it all at the same time and making everybody happy. So thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Our next audience member, if you would please unmute your mic and state your full name and your address, and feel free to share your camera, and you'll have 2 minutes. Joyce Debris, if you could, you're up next. If you could please unmute your mic.
Sorry, it was a mistake. It was touched.
No worries. Can you please state your full name and your address? And if you're comfortable, please share your camera. If not, please go ahead and state your full name and address, and you'll have 2 minutes for your comments or questions.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. It was a mistake that I have no question.
Okay. Well, thank you.
It was touched by mistake.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. Your digital hand was up by mistake. Okay, thank you.
Touched it. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay.
I'm listening.
Okay.
Christine.
Our next audience member, Christine, please state your full name and your address, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Christine Mangiamelli. I live on Cortland Place. My main question is about the potential of the phase reopening. I saw us kind of toying with that idea or floating it. I noticed on the calendar, the dates were yellowed out up to September 21st. Am I to assume from that is when, if you were, you know, I know the whole thing is a hypothetical, but if you were to go with that, that would be around the time we could expect some in-person instruction. And my follow-up question to that is, would that date potentially have been agreed to upon by the union?
No, I wouldn't read into it. I mean, we looked at scenarios of, you know, the 14th, the 8th, the 21st, 28th was what was proposed by the union, I believe. But I would just, so I don't want to necessarily say, I wouldn't read into it. So I appreciate you bringing it up, and or should anyone that's watching. However, we have looked at the 14th, the 8th, and the 21st as potential components to it. The other part in terms of the union, in all aspects of our work, we're going to continue to collaborate with our union, and that includes our Ossining support staff, our teachers union, our, you know, administrators, and all CSEA, to make sure that, you know, they understand and we work collaboratively with that. So I hope that answers your question, but we can certainly make a decision on our own, but to the extent that we can, and we'll continue to do things collaboratively in the district.
I just have a quick follow-up question. Understanding that this would require some reading of tea leaves, when can we expect a decision about this, or ruling it out, or whatever? Everybody's trying to make their plans for childcare and everything else. And if we do have to delay that start of the school year, when can we expect to hear about that?
I'm going to generally share as a parent as well that I understand the planning, and for our staff is in terms of their work. I would say to the board right now that we're going to continue to work diligently, because I want to be crystal clear about what that means and what we can expect, what staff would be expected to do, and anything else, and other challenges that we might experience. Transportation is a big one right now. And I would say too about, the other part that we're weighing heavily is just the nature of accommodations that we need to make for all staff members, not just teachers, but every staff member that in this setting. So I wish I had that solid answer. I would say, I hope sometime early next week, because I know, for the same reason, everyone's planning, and just know that I'm conscious of it, as are all our administrators and every other staff member as well.
All right, thank you so much. I know you guys are working really hard. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next audience member, Mandana Razania. Please unmute your mic and feel free to share your camera, and please state your full name and address, and go ahead with your comment. You'll have 2 minutes.
Mandana Razania, live in South Highland Avenue. My comment and question is about the board meeting going back to the high school library. I personally am not ready for that, and probably many people are not ready for that either. And we know that since Zoom started, more parents are participating in board meetings, and which is really great. Like many organizations have started asking questions, and I think the district and the board should be asking this question: why do we have to go back to a location? Why can't we have Zoom and in person? I think it's time to ask those questions. Is it mandated by New York State Education? I'd like to know the legal, any parameters, why it has to be in person. If it's not, what are the obstacles? What does it take to have continue having these meetings via Zoom? I mean, I put it in a number of ways that you could respond and see how we can continue meeting.
Yeah, I'll respond to that. We are looking at ways in which, when we do our in-person board meetings, beyond the YouTube Live, to also have an opportunity for people to remote in, but we're looking at that. But when we've had our meetings in the past, we've had it on YouTube Live so parents can stream in or live stream and watch the meetings. And we could probably take questions beforehand. I know that's difficult when you haven't heard the agenda item discussed, but we will consider ways in which we could continue to have this really great participation. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Can I just add to that, just as a disclaimer to Mandana, is that this is the governor has given us this window. If I recall, that was an executive order. So that's, there's a timeline to that. So the reason why we're able to do that is because there was an executive order from the governor that allowed us to move into this direction. Otherwise, we would have to be live. So it's a legislative discussion. So to your point, could there be more further discussions at that, put aside the more so, I think, through the lens of maybe participation. So we're learning that obviously there's more families and community members participate. Could be the topic too. We hope this continues moving forward in terms of other topics that we engage in with others. But going back to my point is that this is the governor gave us the wherewithal. And actually, there was a date in August, I believe, that the first executive order was going to end. And then he added another one on top of us, permitting us to be in this space now. And I think it ends early September, if I recall that that first this executive order that he put forth, I think.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Yes, the governor, make that request, executive order. But did the governor say that we have to go back in person meeting?
My understanding, don't correct me wrong, is that the lack of an executive order calls for us to have physical meetings in person. So it's not an optional thing for board members or boards of education.
Is that in the bylaws? I mean, legally we have to? I mean, the community has no voice, has no...
Well, voice, let me just say, you always have voice, right? So we can always articulate our concerns and express those, but the answer to that at this point, absent of another executive order and or a change in the law, that my understanding is that we have no choice. We have to come face to face.
So I just want to close this out by saying, I hear what you're saying in terms of more participation. So if we had the Zoom, you're saying there's more participation, which has been very clear. We have 70 people on our Zoom call, and we have about 45 people on the YouTube live, and prior meetings have been over 200 to 300 people. So we're going to make best efforts when we have to be live in person because the executive order runs out. We're going to make best efforts to find ways for the community to be able to view and participate. So we will take that under consideration. So that will have to be what technology needs. And I think you said you had one more question. You have like 30 seconds left. Feel free to ask another question on the reopening.
Yeah, thank you.
Was that it?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, if you have any more questions, you could raise your digital hand and come back in online.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, our next audience member, Deb Samba, please unmute your mic. Okay, so you've done that. Welcome. And please just state your name and your address, and you'll have 2 minutes for your question or comment.
Sure. Thank you so much. And first of all, I just want to thank the board for all of your hard work. I know this is a nearly impossible situation, so I really appreciate it. Just one question about the middle school and high school remote learners. If those students are going 100% remote, sorry, my name is Deb Stamba, 2 Barnes Road, Ossining. If those learners are going 100% remote, will they be basically operating in the remote cohort or whomever is not in school that day, the same as the hybrid kids? Or will they be in a different classroom with different teachers?
No, they'd be following the schedule at this point. It looks as if, and again, our building principals are looking at the schedules and staffing, but it would be predominantly participating with those students that are live in the classroom.
And I'll just elaborate briefly.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, it's the nature of a high school schedule, right? It's hard to form a fully remote cohort when the course selections are just so nuanced. But our hope is that, each class, and again, we had said in a prior meeting, we don't want our students in remote to be on the computer all day. But our hope is that they will, we'll be structuring the lessons such that the first 15 to 20 minutes are a mini lesson or direct instruction or something that the fully remote learners will be able to be linked up with.
Okay, and I know Greg Gallup was asking about the percentages. Can you give just a little bit more specifics of the percentage by grade, particularly 6th and 10th for next year, of who is remote and who are live or who have signed up?
Or
at a grade level?
Yeah, if you give me the 30 seconds, I'll give you factual information.
Thank you.
One advantage of being next to your computer. So at the middle school, we have 312 students, and at the high school, it's 304. Within there, I could share with you that that represents 109 6th graders, 111 7th graders, and 92 8th graders. At the high school, 80 9th graders. I'll just keep going by grade. 72 10th graders, 82 11th graders and 73 12th graders.
Great.
But I do want to just put a little caveat that there have been requests post that, we just need to tweak, but the numbers are roughly in that range.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for the time and thanks for taking my question.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Sanchez, that represents about 23%.
Yeah, roughly around 20+% of our
20%.
student population. Yeah,
That have asked to be 100% remote.
correct.
It seems to be somewhat evenly distributed among the grades. I mean, some more than others,
Somewhat, yeah, somewhat.
Okay. Next audience member, Mr. Roger Bhattacharya, please unmute your mic. Feel free to share your camera, state your full name and your address, and you'll have 2 minutes for your comment or question. Go ahead.
Good evening, Roger Bhattacharya, 16 Holbrook Road. Dr. Sanchez and team, thank you for all the work you've been putting into this. I have 2 questions for you. The first question is, has there been consideration around having, having a COVID test prior to coming to school, similar to the way that we ask for physicals and dental exams and things like that, that are part of the requirements? I know that a COVID test is not required, I get that, but is that something that we, for whatever reason, decided not to do, and why?
We're just following the guidelines as we have for every other practice at this point. And the State Education Department, Department of Health, Westchester County Department of Health has not posed that as a recommendation for any school district at this time.
But that could be an option potentially, right? If you chose to do so.
I'd have to look at the legal aspects of that. So I don't, I say that cautiously, but I guess theoretically everything's an option. And I'm not saying that in a facetious way, just generally speaking, yeah, I guess it could be, but I don't know the legalities of that. And at this point, it's not necessarily being recommended.
Okay. And then just one question, I guess, just a general overall, as we're working very hard towards a vaccine, and as know that there's a lot of vaccines that are there. Once a vaccine is deemed to be safe and effective, what is the what's the board's overall opinion on vaccines, especially if New York State recommends that every child gets vaccinated?
I don't know if I can answer that on behalf of the board, but I guess there's a lot of unknowns at this point, Roger. I mean, it's an interesting question. But I think it's, respectfully, I think it's a little still premature to come up with a formal answer without knowing all the facts and the science around said vaccines. And I think we all remain hopeful that something presents itself that gives us an opportunity to, get back to life as normal to the extent that we can. So, I'll just speak generally on behalf of the board in that case.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. We have to follow all the Department of Health guidelines and legislation around mandated vaccines. So it'll be treated like any other vaccine in our community, in our schools. So thank you
very
for
much
the
for your
questions.
answers. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next audience member. Kathy Ann Hayden, please unmute your mic and share your camera if you'd like, and your full name and address, and you'll have 2 minutes for your question. Welcome.
Yes, hi, good night. Thank you all. I know that this has definitely been a challenge for you to be able to accommodate everyone. So I really thank the district and the board, as well as our dedicated teachers, in trying to make this whole process successful for us. I do have some questions as well as comments, and then I realized, thank you very much for letting us know about the additional meeting for the elementary school tomorrow. So I'll save some of my questions for tomorrow as well, since those are more geared towards it.
Kathy Ann, I'm sorry, maybe you didn't hear. Could you just share your address real quickly for the record?
Sure. It's North Malcolm Street in Ossining. Pardon me.
Okay. Thank you. No, that's okay. I always try to make sure we get it on the recording. Thank you. Go ahead.
So I wanted to see if I could get some more clarity, specifically from Dr. Sanchez, about information that was shared at the last board meeting. So from the Teachers Association, it was shared that approximately 60% of teachers were not comfortable in returning. And I know that at that time you were not able to look at the data. And with the presentation today, you said that you need some more time to do the formal recommendation. Would you be able to share any specifics as to why or what the categories are or the areas of concern? For me, that number is pretty high and it resonated for me as a parent. And I just want to really have an understanding. I know that safety is number one, but I didn't know if any of it resonated as far as them being able to handle the materials, like material availability, if it had anything to do with the new policies, being able to implement them successfully. I know that you had briefly touched upon the idea of perhaps considering a phased-in approach, but I wanted to get some more information on that as well.
Sure. You know, I'll share in speaking, and I think we posted, stand corrected, but I want to make sure that, you know, we did our own search and survey before with our staff prior to the Teachers Association. So we have a general sense across all units, again, including our administrators, support staff, teachers unit, and other groups, CSEA, to get a real picture of all beyond the teachers, because it's important that we get a sense of where everyone's at. And the number was around 60%, you know, inclusive of everybody, of, you know, just general concerns and, you know, apprehension. And the differences between there are varied. I would say predominantly, and without having the raw data in front of me, I still don't have it in front of me, so I apologize, but generally speaking, that a lot of them are health and safety, making sure that we have the protocols, you know, in place, that that, you know, that they feel safe upon entering our buildings, and that they feel like we have everything, you know, from our ventilation system to, you know, any other cleaning procedures. I've had questions around, can I see the log of our custodians to make sure that, you know, how are they keeping track? You know, what training are custodians? All those questions across the board. Just speak to me about their general concerns for the cleanliness of our buildings, the ability to address proactively, you know, creating an environment that's safe for everybody, you know, how are temperatures checked and everything else. So that is what I can speak to generally. I have more so degrees of, in my data, I haven't asked the OTA for their information. And respectfully, I feel like, you know, that's, you know, we talk about it, but I don't, you know, I have information that we gathered on our own, which is just as informative, respecting what our staff members have said to this point. But, you know, we have various degrees within there of, we have staff members that have said, I'm ready to go and bring me in, to others that are really, really nervous and concerned.
Sure.
We have the whole gamut, and we're trying to get everyone to understand, and hopefully with meetings like this, like the ones we're having, and addressing those said concerns. Sometimes we can't move fast enough, but we're trying. But that's generally what, you know, hopefully it's generally specific, I hope, in giving you some more solid answers than maybe I gave the last time.
So I'm just wondering if we would be able to get some information, just speaking for parents like myself, who, you know, are also concerned, right? And the way I look at it, it's a partnership between parents, teachers, as well as the school district. If we could perhaps get a feedback, whether it's from you or whomever, as far as if those areas of concerns have been mitigated or resolved, because that's one thing that really resonated to me, the 60%, that's extremely high.
Sure. I mean, here's the thing, and I don't mean this in a negative way or to defend anything, is, you know, I don't know how we stand regionally or as a state, but clearly I'm trying to deal with Ossining, right? That's our responsibility right here and now. We're working. I mean, I get a list of questions every day, as do our union leaders from their members, of items that they want addressed. And similarly here with parents, you know, I'm being very honest, that's why we're having so many sessions, because sometimes you know, the questions are the same and we keep saying them over, but I don't mind answering them over, you know, as many times as we have to make sure that, you know, everyone feels comfortable. It's that important. To your point, we're working in partnership, right? So I don't know to what degree I'm going to get everyone to be 100%. I would actually say that I'm more likely not to get everyone to feel 100% comfortable.
Sure, sure.
Right.
And
What I hope, and I don't know, quite honestly, if how far we delay it where we would get 100%, you know.
sure. So to be clear, I know that in a perfect world, it would be ideal to have 100%. But as a parent, I would like to know that I have already all of these concerns with the pandemic like everyone else, right?
Right.
So I at least want to know that the personnel in which would be educating my kids is comfortable with being there, and that any concerns, especially about safety, is addressed, because I would like my child to
Yeah.
be in a safe environment.
Well, we share that in common. I'll just say that out loud with you. Like, we share that completely in common. What I would just want to say from being a realist as well, is I'm not 100% certain that I would get everyone to a point of feeling completely comfortable in the midst of a pandemic right now. I'm being we're going to put all the precautions, we're going to follow all the CDCs, we're going to put all the steps that we need to, that we're working to articulate. But I can assure you right now that everyone's going to feel, 100% comfortable. I hope I can get them there, quite honestly, in the next few days, months, and, but just know that we're working hard to assure just generally that you feel comfortable as a parent, that we address the concerns. Staff members are meeting with their building principals to address questions, and we're going to respond, because from there come more questions. And more thinking, right? How are we going to do things? And some of it, to be honest with you, we don't have an answer to, because we'd like to work in partnership of how things are going to go, right? I'll use an example that comes up often, like, how are we going to do mask breaks? Be honest with you, I haven't, I'm not the one that
one of my questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's just generally speaking, as superintendent, I don't know the answer to that. And I'm being very honest with you about that.
Okay.
Because I really want to leave that to our educators in the instructional, the context of our instructional programs, with a pre-K teacher, high school teacher, and others to make those determinations. And I respect, and we'll, clearly we can give ideas, but, the practical side of actually putting that into operation, we need the voice of all our staff members, which is missing, at least in this time, although we're getting some feedback at this point. So I'm just trying to be realistic with you as well.
Sure.
But I hear your concerns, and we're trying
Sure.
to address them as much as we can, and the concerns of our staff as well.
Sure. And in respect for your time and the 2-minute rule, just to touch on Greg Galick's point of view, I think it's great that the board is doing a walkthrough, but for us parents, it would be great if we're able to see this ahead of time to understand with the new setup, the environment in which we are sending our children in the school. If we could have that ahead of the opening day, that would be great.
I think it's a great suggestion. Then I can assure you we'll work towards providing you at least some visuals of what, the classrooms will look like. Because we want to reduce the anxiety, right? And to the extent that we can, right? For your child and for yourself as a parent, and for our staff members as well.
Sure. And I'll reserve the rest of my questions for tomorrow, specifically for the elementary school. But real quickly, for other parents who may have other kids outside of elementary, when will the parents be able to get a schedule for their actual child's class?
I mean, let me just answer that in the general. This is specific because I can't give you an exact date.
Sure.
However, I just want to share the challenge that I articulated before, but maybe not in the same context connected to the schedules. The remote has thrown things off completely as it relates to scheduling, right? I'm being very honest with you, like it really has. So our building principals worked with others as well to make sure that we were just providing hybrid or live, right? And once we put out remote, it took all the cards that we had in place in various sections, and it's reshuffling now.
Sure.
So they're going through right now in the next, and they have 2 weeks to do this. So we had hoped and continue to hope that we can get this done by the end of the week. But I want to be realistic too with our building principals that this is something that we can, that may or may not be a fact. What I do know, what we're trying to do to the extent that we can is at least give you the days, right? Because that's a big one for our families. So you can plan appropriately. So it's either Monday, Tuesday, or, Thursday, Friday, if you're in the hybrid. And then we can assign you a teacher after that. But at least it helps with the planning process. That's what we've heard from families, and we're working towards that if we can.
Sure, and thank you very much for your transparency and for all the hard work that everyone continues to do. I hope the school board would also consider a virtual orientation, especially for children who are attending, new schools. This will help them as far as being, acclimated with how their new school would look, perhaps even meeting their teacher ahead of time to have a familiar face and so forth.
Thank you.
Definitely get that virtual tour and orientation going. No, these are great suggestions, and we're going to make that happen.
Okay.
So thank you, Ms. Hayden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next audience member, Danielle Perori. Please unmute your mic. Feel free to share your camera and state your full name and your address, and you'll have 2 minutes to ask your question or comment. Welcome. You're unmuted. Danielle, you can go ahead. We can't hear you yet, though. I see that you're unmuted, but I can't hear you. Now you're muted again. It might be something with your mic on your computer.
We can go to Lynn and then come back to Danielle. Just leave Danielle right there.
Okay, all right. Lynn Lang, please state your full name and your address, and feel free to share your camera, and welcome, and you'll have 2 minutes. Go ahead, Lynn. So we can't, you can talk. Can you talk? Let's see if we can hear you. Oh, we can't hear you.
She can definitely talk, but we can't hear her.
We can hear, you're unmuted. There might be, if you have
An audio setting in the lower left somewhere.
Right, she's unmuted, but do you think maybe on her computer, if you hit like FN and like the mic?
Next to the mic, there should be like a little arrow where you can open up your settings and put, either speakers or headphones. So it might not
put herself in mute.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the little crown, it's right next to the mic on the bottom left icon. If you click on that, there's like a setting button, and that's what Danielle can do too. Wait.
Am I good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Woo-hoo! Okay.
Great. And Danielle, I'll let Danielle, we'll get right to you in a minute. Okay.
Can't hear you yet, though. Can't hear you
yet, Danielle.
Play with the settings in the lower left.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Lang. Please state your full name and your address, and go ahead with your comment or question.
Okay, my name is Lynn Lang. I'm at 45 Bellevue Avenue, and my question is, I think one of the last meetings, Mr. Hancock had a slide up, and there was some mention of a 25% hybrid model instead of 50, and I just was wondering where we're at with that. Is that still a possibility of a 1 day a week? I may have missed something in between, but I just wasn't sure where.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I'm sorry we didn't connect. I know we were exchanging emails.
Okay.
So, but right now we're at 50-50 for both the middle school and the high school. What I did share just in this presentation is that, in the context of sort of a phasing in, that maybe there might be maybe the first week where we bring in half of the half, right? A quarter on the, just to, just sheer numbers, make sure our procedures are intact. But right now we're looking at a 50% of our students coming in. So that would be the 2 days in school, similar to everybody else's across the school district.
All right. Thanks. And thank you everybody for what you're doing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do want to just respond to the one parent before. Sorry, it got a text to clarify that the high school and I believe the middle school schedules are going out on the 28th. So of this month. So
okay.
I mean, that's the goal. It's the goal.
I think on your Facebook Live with Pastor Jones, he said a word that really needs to be stated is the fluid. It's a very fluid situation, and we just have to keep rolling with it. So we appreciate that. So the 28th of August, it is.
Yeah, that's what Mr. Hancock just told us.
All right, Danielle, on your bottom left hand, right next to the mic, there's a little like a hat. It looks like a little arrow up. If you press on that, there's settings, and sometimes it'll say computer using your microphone. No. All right. Maybe we can help you technically. We're gonna help you on the side. Maybe somebody can email her, or rather through the Q&A to help Danielle. And we're gonna go to the next question. All right, Gina, if it looks like you're unmuted, and you already stated your full name and address. So
Yes. Thank you for taking my next question. If I choose any time during the hybrid option that I'm uncomfortable with my daughter at the school, I assume that it won't be a problem to pull her and put her 100% remote, right? Or somebody can answer that question.
Yeah, I'll just generally say that we'll attempt the best we can. It may not be immediate, but we'll make we'll make efforts to do so. Part of it is staffing and schedule. I don't foresee as much of an issue, particularly at the secondary level. If it was an elementary, it'd be a little more challenging because we have set classes. But at this point, I don't foresee any issues for you.
Oh, okay. I would wonder why it would be problematic at all, because if she's 3 days a week.
As I'm talking out loud, I corrected myself, to be honest with you. I'm just being honest.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
I just assume it would be actually kind of seamless almost, because if for some reason, the building, something happens, but I would want to be, reassured that I can do that.
Yeah, I mean, we're just asking, just to the extent possible, to be as, to have a pathway for our kids from the beginning, but, we recognize that things are going to shift, right? Your comfort level is going to shift.
Sure. Oh, listen, I would love her 5 days a week. If you could take her, please.
Yeah, and we'd love to have her. Just the other part is just, the comfort level, how our child, families have asked, like, what if my kid's not doing well, in this setting, whatever the one that chose, like, we have to talk about that. We have to educate children, educate them in the best, setting, and some of it some students will respond to one and better than another, and we need to talk about that collectively.
Great. All right. Thank you again.
Okay, it looks like we have just 2 more questions. Dr. Sanchez, I know you're going to need to leave. So go ahead, Dr. Sanchez. Feel free to say goodbye. And
no, it's okay. I'm here. I'm just zooming in and out. So if you don't mind.
Oh, okay. All right. No worries. All right. Andrea N, please unmute your mic. Okay, so your mic is unmuted. Please state your full name and your address.
Oh,
yeah, sorry. State your full
it's
name.
it's Vanessa Vaccaro from Ossining Teachers Association. I think I logged in through, someone sent me the link for the Zoom. How is everyone? You could hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Loud and clear, Vanessa.
I'm sure. So I just wanted to give an update. I know I did speak last week, and I did want to just address the previous questions and comments. So the OTA has been working very closely with Dr. Sanchez to address our many questions about health and safety. We still are at a point where we have a lot of unknowns. And I think it's the amount of unknowns that really is adding to that level of discomfort. As teachers, we like clear answers. We like clear protocols. And that's why we are constantly asking all the questions. So like, for example, something like, what does a mask break look like? Let's just come up with a protocol for what it looks like. And then we could check that off the list that we have that answered. In addition to the health and safety piece, we do have a lot of concerns about the instructional pieces. We're still working out what the remote academy is going to look like. We still are working out some details with some of the schedules, like in the hybrid model, what Wednesdays are going to look like. So that is why we really asked to start off remote, because we really wanted to perfect our remote model. We also felt that by starting off with the remote model, we actually have all of the students together at once. So we start off together and it doesn't create this A group and B group. We understand the importance of connecting with the students at home. So we really want to make sure we have the live streaming down, we have the technology down, and we feel comfortable with it. And also by starting off remote, it gives us a chance to kind of practice those cleaning protocols and maybe tweak things if needed. So that's where we are at right now. And I know that we will continue to work collaboratively with Dr. Sanchez and the district leaders. I know everyone is working really hard, and we appreciate the collaboration very much.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, and we would welcome those ideas and solutions as we're going into the school year. And, you know, we appreciate everything that our educators and staff are doing to support our community. And we look forward to continuing our collaboration to bring as many students back as possible and safely and instructionally sound. So thank you. And now we'll move into our next audience member. Okay, I see that you're unmuted and please state your full name and your address. And
I'm not Leslie, that's my wife.
You could be Leslie.
Sure, Chad Goldman. Chad Goldman, we're on Park Avenue. Just want to say that I completely understand everyone's concern, the teachers not wanting to go back. I think the statistic was 60%. I'm surprised it's not higher. You know, you saw with small businesses, we own a small business, none of our employees wanted to come back, especially with the unemployment situation. So given the option to operate online from home, sure, I'm surprised 100% doesn't want to do that. But I just want to state that I think for especially, we have 2 elementary school kids. One's going into kindergarten, the other in 1st grade. It's ineffective, the online, and we have good kids who listen, but it's still just really ineffective for us. More so just the social aspect that we're missing. And I'm curious, I don't think anyone's brought it up, if it's being evaluated, the current state in Ossining itself. I mean, I think I saw there was only 6 active cases. I'm worried too. I go to work every day. I mean, I get it, but I think it should be strongly considered for elementary school kids to be more than 2 days in person. I know logistically that might be hard, but whether it's hazard pay for teachers who can work, I understand, you know, teachers with pre-existing conditions, maybe they should not be in person. I just think that at that young age, the social aspect is so important. And another thing is you have a situation where families are going to be finding other ways or other places to put their kids when they're not in school. So I think it just pretty much doubles the, you know, the risk of getting sick. With being in other places, other daycares, people watching your kids. You know, restaurants are open now, gyms are opening, bowling alleys open today, I think. Meetings up, you know, gatherings up to 50 people now are allowed from the CDC. That's the guidance. So I think we should just take a look at, you know, what's going on in our community, how many cases there are, and take it from there. But I'm just hoping to have the kids back in school as much as possible. And I know a lot of parents probably feel that way. And trust me, I get the you know, it's a scary situation.
Thank you.
I want to mention those things.
Thank you. We appreciate that comment. And I think we've generally been talking about also the easing in of going back to school. And we know that our hybrid model, just because of the amount of students in our schools and the size of our buildings, even in the best of times, we were crowded. So the in-person option is unfortunately going to be at 50%, but Dr. Sanchez has also shared ways in which he's looking for community learning hubs. So those remote days that our students can go there as well. But we know that the easing in is also going to be for all of us as we go back, as we've all gone back, whether we've gone back to work at an office or even have gone out to a restaurant and sat outside. So we're hoping that we continue to do that, and as Dr. Sanchez said, everybody continues to get comfortable, and it'll be fluid, and we'll have solutions along the way. So we really appreciate your comment.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, next audience member, Beth Sniffen, please unmute your mic. And if you want, share your camera and state your full address and you'll have 2 minutes. Okay.
Am I there? Do you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Okay. So Beth Sniffen, 3 Stormytown Road. A full disclosure, I'm the region director for the Westchester East Putnam PTA. So first I want to say that we love all of our teachers. They do a great job, and I can appreciate, you know, some of the things that they said in their letter. But I just want to state that the New York State PTA position on the reopening of schools is that we support the parents and guardians' choice in what they want for their children as far as virtual and hybrid. The Department of Health and the State Education Department gave strict guidelines with which we are sure that the school district will adhere to, and in the next few weeks, hopefully will work out all the kinks with the teachers union. As we've seen in the presentation today, the economically disadvantaged kids in our district are the most vulnerable, and they really, really need to be in school, and they need to thrive in school. And that's what I want to share. So thank you for listening to me, and thank you all for the hard work that you do. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Thank you to the state PTA and to the regional PTA for all your work and for your hosting last night's forum. Okay, next audience member, Mr. Roger Bhattacharya. You don't have to state your full name or your address again because you already did that. Please go ahead.
Yep, thank you very much. So I just like to comment. I really think that the president of the Ossining Teachers Association has some really strong points there about not splitting up everybody between A and B day immediately, giving it a chance for everything that needs to be done to protect the teachers. Are all of those points are best satisfied. I do think that it's important that we ensure that we can get the online working together. God forbid that there is an outbreak. And the reason why we don't see as much of an outbreak now, because we've been spread further apart during the summer months, as what the summer tends to happen. As we come back to the fall and we start to congregate more often, there is that chance of spread. So if I think about the economically disadvantaged, I would like to make sure that their health is taken care of in addition to their learning, but we have to do this in a very responsible way. And so I endorse what Ms. Vaccaro said, and I certainly would hope that everybody here endorses her as well. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. I yield back my time.
Thank you. I actually wanted to point out, we had a community member, community partnership meeting on Monday, and the director of Open Door actually had shared that with all the mask wearing during the winter now, the fall through the winter, they're actually expecting to see other disease numbers go down, such as the flu, strep, and other things. I thought that was really interesting. But we're absolutely, Mr. Bhattacharya, taking into account extremely seriously what our staff is stating. So thank you very much for your comments. And we will now go to Danielle, please.
Give Danielle another shot. I think she's got it.
Is it working?
Yes.
Yay,
Great.
okay.
So how about just state your full name and your address, and then you'll have 2 minutes. Go
Thank you again. Thank you for your patience. Danielle Priori, 5 Knollview. One of the things I wanted to bring up were these technical difficulties, and I'll get to it in a second. My biggest concern, and I've heard that the district is not really ready to commit to a specific time frame for the children as far as live synchronous teaching is concerned. My concern is why I have a child going into 1st grade. Why have these time frames not been established yet? Obviously, we know it's going to be more than what was done March through June because nothing was done. Not to be rude, but it's the truth. So in looking at the schedules, I'm seeing 15, maybe 30 minutes of live synchronous learning on Wednesdays when all children are home. I'm concerned. I don't believe that that's enough. And then as you just witnessed, no matter how savvy we are with the computer, there are always technical difficulties. So if you have a 15 to 20 minute lesson planned for a child, it's going to take 5 minutes for everyone to log on. The teacher needs to greet the students. You need to go through all these technical difficulties. There are going to be many days where you click to unmute, it doesn't work. Your sound doesn't work. There are always issues. Sometimes this can take 10 to 15 minutes. You know, is it going to be explained that responsibly, if it took 15 minutes to troubleshoot, that we should stay on an additional 15 minutes and teach our kids? It doesn't leave a lot of time for teaching. I understand we want to engage the kids, but we can still find creative ways to engage our children and still give them the foundational skills, still give them direct, explicit instruction in reading, in writing, in math. And that needs to be done on all remote learning days. Have we discovered if we have enough teachers to possibly teach the children live synchronous teaching on the days that they're home? So obviously the classroom teacher would be the one who does it on Wednesday, but when that cohort is home, is there going to be a teacher who is just in charge of remote only? I think it's really important that we talk about timeframes.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sanchez or Dr. or Carrie
I'm
Ann?
going to turn it over to Ms. Sipos.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, Danielle. I appreciate your comments, and we want our kids in front of their teachers too. I just want to say that. I say that all the time when I take phone calls with parents. We know that there's nothing more important. And we know that that time with their teachers needs to be interactive, right? So when you look at the schedule, we have a schedule that's very different than it was last year. And I would say that teachers, particularly if you're going 100% remote, will be, really live with our kids on a pretty consistent basis. And I think that's true. And I want to just clear up the Wednesday too, our teachers will be live with their children. So maybe the way the sample schedules look doesn't speak to that, but I do want to reassure you that it'll be very different this year, very different.
Yes, and I've had this conversation with you before, and I do believe that it will be different. But I feel that there are some underlying issues as to why timeframes haven't been established. And, full transparency, if we're having issues with the union, it needs to be brought public. Because we don't have a lot of time left. And these kids lost 4 months of school because there was no live instruction. And we as parents were responsible for that. I work full-time, and many families work full-time. I need to make sure my son is learning, and the district is responsible for that. We need to get everybody on board. We have to seal these academic gaps from the last 4 months, and we need to move these kids forward. And I understand the fear behind teaching live. It's embarrassing when things go wrong. I was embarrassed when my system wasn't working. I just needed to reboot my computer. But with all due respect,
thank you, Danielle.
I know, but I want to just, I'm sorry, but March through June was the time when all of this troubleshooting should have been done by educators. And to ask for time in September to learn how to do this when they should have been practicing it in March through June is a little bit offensive. Thank you.
So before you leave, I just want to, I need to respond to what I think sometimes is an urban legend out there, particularly because I've heard it, and I appreciate you bringing it up, is that, there's this underlying thing that maybe we're not talking about. We are, virtually filming within the classrooms or camera, or because we're working collaboratively with our teachers. So there has not been, granted, we may not always agree on everything, and I'm being honest, but, who does? But it's been, we've been working collaboratively to this point, trying to figure out what's right. Vanessa came up and spoke before, Mr. Ficaro. And are there still questions we still answering? Yes. Are there still questions, but that has, the phone lines have been open to discuss what and problem solve the issues. So I just need to, I don't want to just to linger in the air without a formal response regarding that. However, again, I think in terms of the time associated with that in the now, and I'm speaking about the now, and how much we're going to be live. Is that your question? Because I think you deserve some clarity around that. So I know our time is like, I don't have that broken down, and maybe that's something that Ms. Sipos, just asking, maybe we can follow up with you via email and just say, this is what you can expect, because I understand where you're coming from. We understand, and we all recognize that what happened in the past could be better. And we wish it was where we hope to be moving forward. So, but we can't go past. We're looking to move forward, and you bringing it up, and other parents have brought it up as well, and staff members have brought it up, and that's what we're trying to respond to as we proceed and go forward for the upcoming school year. And we have practice with things our staff members have learned and improved on, and yet there's things, particularly if we have two groups going in, with virtual and in person, that's something that folks are gonna, our colleagues are gonna have to need some practice with, but we got to get in there to try it. And we have to, and I'm confident that we're all going to work together to have parents, staff, and our children as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to anyone, to the teachers, to the administration. I know that everybody's working very hard.
I'm glad you brought it up, because it's not the first time. So I appreciate it. I'm just saying that in general.
No, and I just want to add, there's no doubt there's going to be more live instruction than there was in the spring. And that's what we're all working towards, whether it's a remote, during the remote days for everybody. And then the balance, as I've heard, our elementary administration also speak about the balance of too much time is screen time. So that balance, because we don't want kids on screens all day. But I have a feeling that we're going to be modifying as we go along, but there's absolutely going to be more live instruction for remote days. There's no doubt to that.
And is there a time frame in which the board is comfortable in sharing this with the public?
Well, here's what I would say is that, there's an elementary meeting tomorrow, right? With our parents. So we should, if you attend or if you don't, then we'll get you that information, but we should be prepared to make give you a time frame of, the time that we can expect to go live. And I hope that's helpful. So that's a more immediate piece. I don't have the schedule in front of me, so
No, I know.
intimate knowledge of it, but I do, I guess. But but the amount of time that kids will be on, and I think too, the other part is it'll vary from time to time. But we can speak to it probably better tomorrow night. Tomorrow, right? The elementary is tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
taking
you. Thank you, Danielle.
Lisa, what's
Okay,
the time again for the elementary?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Thanks.
Will be in English, and 5 o'clock will be
5
in
o'clock, yeah.
Spanish. Okay, we're going to take one more audience question, and then we're going to move on with our board meeting. And Jana, thank you for unmuting your mic. Please state your full name and your address, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Jana Iparagiri. I live on Everett Ave. My question was, when we did have live instruction in the spring, those check-in times, and then the one-on-one times we had with my son's kindergarten teacher, it seemed like there was not a lot of tech support for the teacher in terms of purchasing of pro accounts of Zoom or Google Meets, so that they did have a more interactive experience. When I thought Zoom could just do this, right? You just kind of talk and that's all you do in one group. But with a pro account on Zoom, you can do group breakout rooms, you can do polls, you can do surveys to make it a much more interactive online experience. Is there going to be resources for the teachers like that? Or would the board potentially, like, if a parent myself wanted to purchase ProZoom for the teacher, would that be, maybe that's something that needs to be discussed, but is there support basically for more pro accounts for online learning for teachers to the students?
I mean, I think generally speaking, the answer is yes. We did look into Zoom and moving in that direction. We've settled still on Google right now. So we're assessing that really carefully. We did look at it post. There were some data privacy pieces that we needed to consider initially. That's why we were in that Google format. But we did assess the Zoom as an option for us moving forward. There are some pieces that, albeit they may not be in the immediate for Google, that we see as coming down the pike in terms of enhancements, i.e. like breakout rooms and others that we know currently exist within the context of Zoom and are good practices to utilize not only with adults but with children. So I hope that presents at least a picture that we are, we're amenable to doing that. And but right now, we've decided to stick
at least for the kindergarten class, the best thing was if the teacher could just mute all or be able to manipulate.
We've seen it when there was 100 students and when there were a few students. So, yep.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much. That was my question.
And the good news, I just wanted to add to that, the good news we're seeing is that even with Zoom and Google Classrooms, the advancement in technology and their listening to customer needs has been advancing. So we're seeing technological advancements on all of these softwares. So it's been helpful. So that's the hope. But thank you for your question. And that you're welcome. And that'll wrap up our questions for this agenda item. And now if I'll, Illy, if you will please share the agenda for the audience. And thank you, Dr. Sanchez, and everybody for this update on reopening. Really appreciate it, and for all the opportunities for everybody to ask questions and to comment. And I want to remind everybody we have an amazing website that Nicole Reese has been updating throughout the whole pandemic and has added frequently asked questions as well as many questions that were asked over the last couple of weeks. And feel free to go there as well. And if there's any clarification that you need, please let us know. And always feel free to ask your questions to the board, Dr. Sanchez, or to our Just Ask at Ossining unionfreeschooldistrict.org, the initials for that. All right, so moving right into the regular meeting business of the board. I'd like to take a motion to vote on resolution 6.1 through 6.7.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. 6.1, resolution to approve an agreement with the Ossining Association of Administrators and employee number 04021. 6.2, resolution to adopt the retention and disposition of schedule for New York Local Government Records, Schedule LGS-01. 6.3, resolution to approve the minutes of the annual reorganization meeting of January 1st, 2020. 6.4, resolution to approve the minutes of the special meeting of July 1st, 2020. 6.5, resolution to approve the minutes of the special meeting executive session of July 7th, 2020. 6.6, resolution to approve the minutes of the special meeting of July 15th, 2020. And 6.7, resolution to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of July 28th, 2020. Any comments? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, resolution 6.1 through 6.7 have passed. Moving into our next section, curriculum and instruction. I'd like to take a motion to vote on resolution 7.1 through 7.4.
So moved.
Second.
7.1, resolution to accept recommended placements. 7.2, resolution to appoint members of the Committee on Special Education and subcommittee chairs for the Committee of Special Education. 7.3, resolution to appoint members of the Committee on Preschool Special Education, CPSE. 7.4, resolution to appoint alternate members of the Committee on Special Education Committee on Preschool Special Education and Subcommittee on Special Education. Any comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, moving into business office matters. I'd like to take a motion to vote on resolutions 8.1 through 8.4.
Can I make a motion to separate 8.2, please?
Yes. Take a motion to separate out 8.2.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. We are going to, now I'd like to take a motion to vote on 8.2.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, 8.2, resolution regarding a certiorari refund payment for Sherwood Fee 1 LLC in the amount of $7,953.88. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain. Thank you.
Okay. I'd take a motion to vote on resolutions 8.1, 8.3, and 8.4.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, 8.1, resolution regarding acceptance of funds from Equitex Equitable Foundation for OHS in the amount of $1,000. 8.3, resolution regarding the acceptance of gift of funds from Jan Bronnell and Ken Chudkowski for Chromebooks for Brookside School in the amount of $2,000. And 8.4, resolution regarding interfund transfers. Any comments? I'd like to thank the accepting of the funds from the Equitex Equitable Foundation of $1,000 and to the two community members that have donated $2,000 in Chromebooks for Brookside School. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. Moving into personnel matters. I'd like to take a motion to vote on 9.1 through 9.10.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Resolution 9.1, resolution regarding rescinding bus attendant appointments. 9.2, resolution regarding bus attendant resignations. 9.3, resolution regarding professional staff appointments. 9.4, resolution regarding bus attendant appointments. 9.5, resolution regarding per diem substitute appointments. 9.6, resolution regarding teaching assistant reappointments. 9.7, resolution regarding school monitor reappointments. 9.8, resolution regarding per diem substitute reappointments. 9.9, resolution regarding civil service staff appointments, summer school programs. And 9.10, resolution regarding support staff appointments for summer school programs. Any comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. And now we move along to audience recognition. So if you have a question other than what was on the agenda that you want to bring up now, please feel free to raise your digital hand. And let me just give that a minute. All right, we don't have anybody raising their hands. Thank you. Thank you to our audience. We are now going to move into board discussion and information, meaning have there been any committee meetings this week and to have any dialogue that our board members would like to discuss. I believe we had an audit meeting this week.
We did have an audit meeting this week, or was it the end of last week? Sorry.
Monday, I think, yeah.
Basically, there's the schedule for the audits coming up. It'll be over the next 2 weeks. And so we should, we'll have the full report for the board thereafter. But not really much news. It's just a procedural step that we had to hold the meeting when we did. Unless my other colleagues want to add anything in, that's what I have.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything to discuss? Okay. Trustee Galef, you just have your mic off, but do you have anything that you wanted to say?
You want me to come up with something?
You don't have to, but it's always, I just like to, that's the way I can tell if someone wants to speak.
I understand. A quick comment, just to follow up on some just, I don't know the answer, but the comment about remote meetings and Zoom meetings, I have been thinking, and this is not to discuss, but to plant a seed. I don't know in the way board meetings are set up, we do a lot of presentations. Just kind of been curious if the presentation part could be more of a Zoom meeting where decisions aren't made and the voting on agenda items, I know is real official board business. Just brainstorming on whether there isn't maybe short-term meeting in the fall, then longer term, some way to utilize what we have here with Zoom, where it's more of like a cabinet presentation that gets a lot of community involvement, questions, and then we as a board, I'm guessing, we navigate for a while, but I'm guessing governor and state is going to get us back in person for the vote type stuff. But as you think about it, I know the village, everybody's going to go through the same conversation. The village.
Excuse me, Greg, your audio is coming in a little bit fuzzy. Sorry, I thought you were frozen for a second.
No.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Just saying, I know the village, everybody's going to be looking at the same question of how do you integrate Zoom with regular meetings? Obviously, regular meeting laws put up in the 1800s. There's a good reason why they don't want boards meeting in private and back rooms, and you need to know where the boards are. So there's a real reason why we have public meetings. So we can't discount that, but we're definitely seeing that there's value in public involvement. So
yeah,
just something to think about. How,
yeah.
You could structure.
Greg, it seems
some of both.
Having bandwidth troubles, but I think what I heard from the community member, while it's nice to watch it live, I think folks like coming into the meeting virtually. They're willing to do that and to ask their questions live. So if we could maintain that, I think that would be very helpful. I know when we go back in person, when the executive order is up, we'll obviously be following all the safety guidelines. And I don't think there'll be a lot of, how many people will be allowed to have in the audience. So we're going to have to figure that out. We're going to look at the technology of that. So I think it was really a good point to be brought up. And okay, and thanks, Greg. It seems like now that your mic is off, I could see you moving around. So I guess it's still a little unstable. I know not everybody, it seems okay now. All right, anybody else before I take a motion to adjourn? All right, I want to thank everybody and everybody who's still in the audience and everybody who did participate tonight and come to our meeting tonight, whether it was through the Zoom or through our YouTube channel. So thank you very much to everybody. And I'd like to take a motion to adjourn the regular meeting of August 18th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, everybody have a very nice evening. Thank you.
Night.